Welcome back to the Bentonville Beacon podcast, where we're sharing stories and advice from the entrepreneurs, business executives, and community leaders, sparking the rise of the greater Bentonville area, which represents one of the fastest growing and most dynamic cities and economies in the United States, and is nestled in the Ozark Mountains of Northwest Arkansas in the heartland of America. Hey everybody, I'm your host, James Bell, and today we are embarking on an educational journey with Dr. Dennis Rittle, who is president of Northwest Arkansas Community College. His story from being the first in his family to attend college to leading NWACC is as educational as it is inspiring. Dr. Rittle's leadership at NWACC reflects the vibrant growth and transformative spirit of Bentonville. At the helm of the college, he's not just working to advance educational frontiers, but is also involved in enriching our community's tapestry. In this episode, we will explore how Northwest Arkansas Community College connects to Bentonville's dynamic evolution and learn from Dr. Rittle about his vision for shaping the future of our local workforce. Dr. Rittle, welcome to the Bentonville Beacon podcast.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Well, glad to have you. Will you start by letting our audience know about you? What would you like to share with them?
Sure. I was born and raised outside of between Philadelphia and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They call it the Piedmont. Mm-hmm. It's a hilly area. It's a lot like Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas particularly, where there's hills, there's lots of vegetation, foliage. My father was in manufacturing, and my mother, on her side of the family, they were agriculture. So I found myself going to the plant and hanging out with my dad in the manufacturing area as a child, and then also spending my time in the summers working on the farm, whether it was milking the dairy cows. We had Holsteins. Wow. or taking eggs out 4 o'clock in the morning from the chickens, So learned a lot about work ethic and the importance thereof. I did have the unfortunate experience of losing my mother as a child. When I was 12, she did take her life. And I think that was a moment in my life which was a bit of a why. That is a why in the road. I had to make a decision on how I was going to look at life. Was I going to choose to allow my circumstances to shape me, or was I going to look and say, what can I do as a human being to rise above the challenges that I'm facing and make for a better life? And I chose the latter of the two. And so going forward, I began to become more involved in volunteer type work and what I could give always back to the community, thinking about how can I help make other people's lives better. In doing so, I found myself working at a local YMCA where we were involved in helping people complete their GED. And it was there that I discovered my love for education. And so that for me was a pivotal moment. I was working with folks who are significantly older than I was, but I was very talented in the math and the sciences. And so I would help folks complete those areas of study so they could go ahead and complete their GED and then have many more doors open to them in the workforce. And so that was my passion for it. I found myself then, I entered the military. I was in the Air Force, both stateside and overseas. It was also while I was in the Air Force, I met my wife of now 32 years, and we have 2 adult children. All of us are 2-year college graduates, though I was the first in my family to go to college. Neither my mother or my father went to college, and their parents, none of them even finished high school. Most only finished elementary, enough to read and write and maybe do some basic arithmetic. But I wanted to go ahead and further my opportunities in life, and knowing that education was one of the clearest pathways to do so. So I took that journey, and then while I was in the military, I was then given the opportunity to teach for Air University. And I taught areas in Doppler radar theory, atmospheric physics, thermodynamics. Those were the areas that I taught in. I wrote curriculum and then taught in those spaces. And it was there that I recognized that, yes, indeed, I already loved education, but now I found that I had a really good knack at doing it. And it gave me joy. And so from there, now it's been 30 years later, wow. And through a series of just pieces along the way that I found that particularly the 2-year sector was special to me. Why? Because I was a first generation student. Mom and dad didn't go to college, much less graduate. And recognizing that oftentimes you are the salmon swimming upstream. You're fighting the tide. All the forces that are in play are in many ways working against you. You don't know the language. You're talking to people about things like Pell Grants and these forms you have to fill out to get financial help. And I'm more concerned about, is there a catch? Am I going to have to pay this back with some high interest rate? All of these, I would call negative thoughts would go across one's mind, and there was no one really there to help steer me. But thankfully, in my case, when I married, my wife did come from a college-going family. So they were able to help me work through some of the language. Had it not been for her and her family, it would have been a much harder road for me. But going through that journey made all the difference. And that's where I found that for me, the 2-year school, my wife's a 2-year grad, I'm a 2-year grad, both of our adult children are 2-year graduates. And then my son, our eldest, has gone on for more education as well. But and so has my wife and I. But the bottom line is that the 2-year school was our starting point. And we found that you can start there and you can go anywhere. So that's a little about my journey and what got me into this space.
Wow. If I must have looked like a bobblehead over here when you were talking about the 2-year education. My first degree is, and I went on to have more education after that too, but my first degree is an associate's degree.
Yes.
And it was in biomedical instrumentation, which is a really fancy way of saying I could fix medical equipment. And the ROI on that degree was phenomenal.
Isn't it great?
Right. And it allowed me a pathway to get more experience.
Yes.
Frankly, I needed more experience with people at that point in my life. So strange degree to get more experience with people with, but it led to that,
right.
And then led me to be able to move down the educational path from there. There's no way we could have afforded it otherwise.
That's right, James. And I can piggyback on that. One of the things that oftentimes is lost in the 2-year degree or a certificate level, which might be a year, is that the cost that a student will spend in both time and in dollars on the ROI, the return on investment, it is more significant than any other obtainment of education you'll gain in your educational ladder because of the amount of dollars that are spent at that level, and what you get back on a ratio is higher. It's just significantly higher. Many of our students can exit the 2-year degree without any debt or with very, very minimal debt. So they're able to then go and pursue their career path, not being driven by, I have to pay off this massive school loan. So now I need to take this job, which maybe I don't prefer, over this other job because this first job, it pays more money, but I really don't want to do it. I'd rather take this job that pays less money, but I can't afford to take it because I have this just tremendous debt laying over my head, looming over me. And so that's one of the greatest joys I gain is watching students then be able to have freedom of choice to go where they want to go and to learn and experience. Most of our students today will experience anywhere from 5 to 12 different types of career type work in their career fields. So upskilling and reskilling are going to be more important than ever. And that's a whole different conversation. But getting them started in the space and learning the importance of, being on time for work and being ready for work and being a good team player and knowing how to communicate and knowing how to have self-control when things maybe don't go your way, because that's part of life in the workplace. Those pieces are learned by taking the hard skills they gain in education as well as some soft skills and then refining them in the workplace. And then they're going to find they're going to go to other spaces. But we are here as a community college to provide additional training all along the journey for the duration of their careers and helping to meet them where they are. And then, of course, if we need to hand off and they need to go to the university, that's fantastic. We're there to do that seamlessly as well. But we are here to help empower them. And we want to do that at an affordable price so that they're not strapped with debt. So sorry to get in all that piece, but that's the core of it all in my mind. That's why I do what I do.
You're exactly right. I'm connecting with. I'm picking up what you're putting down, as they say.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about NWACC. Share with our audience, I guess, if you will, the history of NWACC and its connection to Bentonville.
Sure. Well, the school was an offshoot of a college, a community college over in Harrison, Arkansas, North Ark. That's what we call it. It's Northern Arkansas Community College. So that of course, that was the parent college, and there was a desire for there to be some type of two-year school presence over here in Northwest Arkansas back in the 80s. And they started trying to do that work, but they realized pretty quickly the area really wanted its own community college. So after classes started up a little bit, it was to be the college without walls. And that was how it was known, the college without walls. So it was trying to meet in little storefronts and pieces like that. But people realized quickly they really wanted something far more permanent. So in 1989, it went out for its own financial support from the local area, and that was achieved. And that was through a local millage. And so that combined with tuition and fees and some state dollars, the community college was really born. And then from there, of course, walls were erected because students needed spaces, specialized, dedicated spaces for them to learn and to grow, develop their own community. I like to call it that third space. You have your home life, you have your work life, but then you have another aspect of your life which enriches you and fulfills you. And in our line of work at a community college, we're one of those opportunities to be a third space for an adult learner. And that's how we operated. And so the community college became a third space for many of its students, and then to develop and grow. And so from there, of course, the community college now over these last 30, 33 years has just blossomed and has grown and has filled a pretty big chunk of property now on the east side of Bentonville. And it's just remarkable. And the demand for the college, I think this is the one piece that I think oftentimes may not be understood. The idea of the community college, Northwest Arkansas Community College, whoever named it was brilliant. They were brilliant because they didn't think it is born and birthed in Bentonville. But its reaches are regional and now not only national, but international.
Wow.
We have students that are studying overseas. We have faculty that study overseas. We have those who are overseas coming to here to Bentonville to study. Why is that? Because the college thought beyond, it thought bigger than itself, but it allowed the reach of Bentonville to go beyond. And I think that speaks to its founders. All of our regional partners and I think our businesses, they think big. And the college, I was thankful. It thought big, it planned big, and then it played big. And that for me was a big draw. And so that's what you see today. And of course, it has an additional campus now down in Springdale in the corridor with the medical region. And that's going to be another way for Northwest Arkansas Community College, nestled right there, its main campus in Bentonville, to continue to have a reach that is big and broad. And I would argue regional, national, and now even international.
That's really cool. I didn't know about the history, I guess the connection to North Ark, and now the name of the school with the capital W in Northwest becomes clear to me as well. I always wondered about that. It's really neat to hear that the reach is international. I didn't know that either. So that's really cool.
Sir.
Talk to us, Dr. Rittle, as president of the NWACC. What's your vision? What are your most important goals?
Sure. That's a fantastic question. I think first and foremost, remembering that we are a community college. Community is in our middle name. When people ask me, how should the college look and appear in the upcoming years? I said, it should be a mirror of the community's needs. Secondly, and tied, I think, inextricably to that mirroring of the community is that we are student-centric, that we are focused on the needs of our students and where they are. The students' needs today are different than they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And many times people lose sight a little bit because they think, okay, the college started a certain way with certain roots, and those are respected and revered, but also recognizing that it's different in 2023 or 2024 than it was in 1990 and 1989. Very different times. And so recognizing the needs and the expectations of the students are different. I would liken it to our business partners today. If they went back and thought, what did they do and how did they reach their customers and serve their customers back in the 1980s and 90s, it's different than how they're reaching them today because the expectations of the customers are different. So in my vision, is to make sure that we continue to keep community centered to who we are and how we mirror the needs of the community, that we make sure that we are student-centric, and then tied to that is this notion of allowing it to become that third space for the students. And that allows for student life, student activity, and student involvement. We don't want to just be a purely commuter campus where the students arrive, take a class, and leave. We want them to stay, share life, build community, share and exchange ideas and thoughts. They're around people that have a similar aspiration, which is to learn, but they also have very differences. They're very eclectic, the students, both in their languages, in their experiences in life, and in their stations of life. And so more that we can have those relational collisions between the students that allows to enhance the learning experience. And that is my vision for the college.
I like that vision. You guys have ginned up some unique programs as well.
Yes, sir.
So can you talk about some of the unique programs that NWACC offers, and especially some that have come along since you took the reins, about 18-ish?
Yes, sir. Ago? Yes, sir. I'll try to keep this relatively tight. Okay. But I like to say that one of the favorite programs that we have is a certified retail analyst. It began as a true need in this community, and it takes students. Many of them already have degrees. Some of them have advanced degrees, and they want to better their lives. And this is what we call a accelerate workforce skills type training course. And that is, we're not looking to offer college credit, but it is relevant skills to what the workforce is requesting of the student so that they can be active and serve as a certified retail analyst. They complete the course, and the placement is amazing. Many times the students are being placed long before they complete. We want them to complete so they can have all their skills and make sure that they continue to be marketable in their own career paths. Because oftentimes, if they finish the journey, it allows them and empowers them and equips them for the rest of their lives and the rest of their careers. And so that's unique here to NWACC. Another program I'd like to speak to is the Bike Tech program. Sure. And that's very much unique to this region. That program began a few years ago now and has just been remarkable in its draw of students to the region. Of course, bike trails, in the amount of bike trails and paths that we have across this region, it handshakes with our topography, and I would call it the spirit of the community. It is the natural state, and it's a place where we want to have good harmony and leveraging all the abilities that our region gives to us. And bike trails and paths is just one of many. But the bike tech program has been a great success, and looking forward to continue. Now, when I peer into the future, what do I see coming down the pike? Well, starting in the spring, we're going to have our practical nursing program. It's a stair step with our RN, and to the RN, the registered nurse. The college is renowned. NWACC is renowned for its registered nurse program, one of the best in the nation at pass rates and at the volume of registered nurses we produce. But the practical nurse program is part of the career ladder, and it was one that we had not integrated before. Now we're integrated based upon the requests and the needs of our community. It's a direct response to the needs in our community, and that will begin this spring. In conjunction, we rolled out phlebotomy. That's a much shorter term program, but that's because of the demand of the health providers in this region. Construction trails is around the bend. In 2024, in the fall, it will be birthed and it will roll out. It will be the first of its kind in our nation. We already have potential students contacting us from Canada to come down and take the program when it starts in the fall of 2024. So that would very much be very unique. Also, our CDL program now is really rolling, and the pun is intended. It's a partnership with one of our yes, sir. It is a partnership with one of our business partners here in Bentonville, and we are partnering with them. We're using their spaces, their resources, and they're allowing us then to train the students at a very affordable price. And again, it's all about accelerated training, helping the students complete in an accelerated manner. And I would tie with that then, and it's not a new program, but it's how we're doing our models of delivery. One thing I would want the listeners on the podcast to hear loud and clear is we are offering a full array of general education as well as career and technical education coursework in the evenings starting in the spring. This spring, spring of 2024, we're going to have a full array. So take advantage that we're committed to it. We're doing a pilot of that for a minimum of 2 years. We're expecting it to be highly successful and then continue on for many more years to come. And it's in response to the needs and interests of our community. So that's what we're looking at. Those are kind of what I call front of mind. I would mention one other one, and that's biotechnology. That was also driven by our community members. We had that just approved by the Coordinating Board of Higher Education in Arkansas during the summer. It's the first of its kind in the state. And that's, again, because of the visionary aspects that we have of our faculty and our staff of moving forward and making sure that we are operating and providing education which meets the needs of our community. Because again, community is in our middle name. Thank you for a great question.
Well, thanks for that answer. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, it really does. The programs you offer, you're correct, are a reflection of the community. I mean, clearly, starting with the CRA program, the Certified Retail Analysts. I mean, we've got a company in town we've all heard of. Right. Maybe their name starts with a W, Fortune 1, all that good jazz. But there's the 1,600, brands that are present here as well. But when you look at healthcare, man, where we're going in healthcare right now, healthcare and wellness and the biotech industry, everything around that space, people are going to think that Northwest Arkansas and Bentonville came straight out of left field in a few years. That's right. They may not. I'm not sure a lot of people around here realize what's happening. And the construction of trails, what I love about that is that I had Gary Vernon on the show. Oh,
wonderful. Wonderful professional.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And, one of a kind.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely true. And we talked about how, 10, 12 years ago, Bentonville was going out and people here were going out to other places all over the world to learn how to build trails. The world's coming here now. That's right. And they're really going to be coming here now. They're coming here to see and learn, now they can come here and learn. That's right. In a first-in-kind program.
That's right, James. I often say it's better to be chased than the one doing the chasing.
That's exactly right. We talked about some of the future developments. Are there any future developments you would like to add around the university before we?
Well, I think looking at, I mentioned a few of the programs. We are also, and we've rolled out food services now are extensive at the college, and those are going to continue to grow on campus. We're finding the students, again, it's bringing them a place to be. And then, of course, we are integrating athletics now. Look for some things in esports as well as cycling. Look for cycling to come. That to be continued on cycling at NWACC. Very excited about that. We are approaching athletics very differently, I'd like to think, than many of the schools across the nation, and that is making sure that it handshakes with all that we do at the college, and also tries to integrate as much student involvement as possible. Not excluding students, but including as many as possible. We're looking for inclusivity more than anything, and so it's going to be at the forefront as we continue to think about what I like to describe as a much more of a fitness and wellness approach and health to the college campus, and not just purely sports. Sports will be an avenue or an outshoot of that notion, but there's more to it, whether it's intramurals or other ways in which students can participate and engage in developing their own wellness as a human being.
I like that. Staying sort of on the within NWACC, but sort of pivoting to Bentonville some. Could you talk about? Let's talk about you in Bentonville. We've talked a little bit about the way NWACC has been influenced by Bentonville. How about yourself in the 18 or so months that you've been here? What's the surprising way that Bentonville has affected you personally and professionally?
James, when my wife and I applied for the position at NWACC, for us, it was NWACC or bust. We were all in. And when you're a public leader in your career and your life, and any choices you make are oftentimes on the front page of papers because you're a public figure, it does create some duress in your life. But for us, we knew this is where we belonged. We just knew it. It's hard to articulate that, but we knew it. So we were all in. We were all in. And arriving here, you mentioned how is it maybe surprised? I would say it's more confirmed or affirmed. We wanted to be around people. I go back to a statement I used earlier, that thought big, planned big, and played big. I think if I could share a theme, that's the theme. Thinking big, planning big, and then playing. Oftentimes, people, when they might have big ideas, but they don't then put plans to it. Or if they put plans to it, they never execute it. You have to have all three steps. This region does it. And we want to be part of it because that's who we are. That's who we are. And I find myself surrounded by, and my wife and I both and our family, we're surrounded by people that think like us and that lean forward like us and that are hungry. We're not here. We often say there are people who watch things happen, things who participate in things that happen, and those who make things happen. We're the third of that group. We like to make things happen. And we're surrounded by people who like to make things happen. Now, we'll also participate and join, and we'll be in that crowd that helps others, because you can't just have a whole bunch of chiefs and not Indians.
That's right.
I don't mean that to be in a negative sense, or anything politically incorrect. But my point is, you just can't have everybody that's leading. You have to have followers too, but you need to have courageous followers. And I think that's another point. Around here, people pivot between leading and operating as courageous followers. And the only way that people can lead and lead successfully is being surrounded by courageous followers. So oftentimes in my line of work, whether I'm volunteering for a group or serving on a local board, I'm to operate as a courageous follower. But then in my ways at NWACC, I'm operating what I would like to think of as now as a courageous leader. But the only way I can operate as a courageous leader is being surrounded by courageous followers. And so we all work together. It's a very dynamic, and you started with the term Bentonville in this region is a tapestry. That's, in my view, that's the human capital tapestry, is a tapestry of courageous people and knowing when to pivot to be followers and when to pivot and be operating as leaders. And understanding that difference makes all of the difference.
Absolutely. I love that. Leaders and courageous followers. I've been having a hard time putting my finger on describing that, and you just nailed it for me. So thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
But you're exactly right. We're the people who get things done here.
Yes, sir.
And that's who's attracted here.
That's
all
right.
these builder types I keep seeing come here from all over the world.
Yes, sir.
I described it a slightly different way, but realized also, or another component of it. I mean, there's another component of it is that if I learn that you're doing something, I want to jump in and help. I want to be how can I connect you to somebody?
That's right.
And so builders are givers.
That's
too, right.
That's right.
And the real builders are real givers, and everybody's just trying to help everybody get there too.
That's right, James.
Whether they get something out or not of it.
It was something that we expected again, and what we saw it clear and vivid. It's the friendliness.
Yeah.
I'll go walk on trails, and I'll wave at people, and they wave back.
Right.
You can go to some parts of the country. That's not the case. But here it is, an area that's rapidly growing, and people still view other people as people.
Yeah.
People are not viewed as things. They're people. And I think that's one of the greatest beauties here is amongst all the innovation and really all of the brilliance that exists here. Through all of that, people still remember other people are people, and people are valued and respected, and they're treated well, and they're friendly. Oftentimes those things tend to, one gets sacrificed at the cost of another. And yet here in Northwest Arkansas, for somehow, some way, this region has been able to keep both of those beautiful ingredients together simultaneously and not being one being eroded because of another one rising up.
Exactly. I feel like in a lot of places people use other people as a means to an end, and thus their things, right?
That's right, sir.
Here you're absolutely right. I just don't see that happening here.
That's right.
People
it's beautiful.
Are just kind to each other. Their
Yes,
people
sir.
is great. What do you and your family enjoy most about living and playing in Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas?
Yes.
And be sure to throw in some favorite places and activities.
Yes, I'll be happy to share
Give
those.
some shout outs.
Yes, trails for sure in the parks, but Crystal Bridges is definitely on top. I would say the Amazium, the Momentary. Oh my, there's so much to like. And I'm going to share this maybe for a later story, but the downtown square in Bentonville is just remarkable. I think I'll speak to that more later, but the downtown square is is remarkable. And it goes back to just, the way that the areas get closed down just so people can walk and share life together. And again, I'll go back to having those personal, and I mean this in a good way, collisions where people collide with others that maybe they would normally not have met before. And dynamic things happen when different people have those relational collisions. And people find out that they're far more alike than they are different. But they can also help one another. And they just help one another.
That is so true.
And I would say, and then, boy, I would fail if I didn't do this, the volume and the variety of retail. I know we live in Fortune 1 country with Walmart, but I would also add that in our space with Walmart, it's not that there's just one, it's also that they do different techniques at the different stores.
So
and I enjoy that. I'm a early adopter, so I like going to those stores that are trying new methodologies. Because it gives me different ideas and new ideas. And so I thoroughly enjoy how we get to experience as a community beta sites here in Bentonville. It's awesome. It's just awesome. So big shout out to them. And then I would say Drone Up. Drone Up.
But I agree. The going to Walmart here is a really special thing because you're exactly right. We sort of get to be their guinea pigs, and I absolutely
it's wonderful.
Love that. But to have those different experiences and to see what's coming, to be able to call my friends in other places and say, "Hey, I think this is going to make it out of the test bed and get ready," and to hear people actually get excited about it, and start asking questions because they're like, "Well, that's different."
That's right.
Okay, tell me a story. You mentioned a story.
Wow.
I'd love to hear a hashtag because Bentonville story. That's something that happened, maybe a moment or a full-fledged story where you look at it and you think that could only happen here.
That's right. My son, my wife and I have 2 adult children. And so our son and his wife came down from Kansas City last Christmas.
Okay.
And so it was over the holiday season. And we were out in the downtown square in Bentonville, and it was really cold. But it was stunning, the beauty of the downtown area and the ability to park right beside the square. You can think about a lot of places across the country that will not have remotely the kind of beauty of the square, much less be able to park right beside the square. We got out and we had our little grandson with us. He wasn't even a year old yet, so he's in his little stroller. We're all bundled up. His mom was with us. We had our daughter and our son and our daughter-in-law and our grandson and my wife and I, and we're out there and we're just walking around the square, and people are doing photos everywhere. And we went to get a family photo, and we had no lack of people willing to volunteer to take photos on this chilly night in Bentonville, but it was beautiful. And being able to have that moment for our family, and my son and his wife took that away, and that became their Christmas card. So there you go. And they went back to Kansas City, but their greatest joy was being in downtown Bentonville at Christmas time in the beauty of that space, because it was beautiful, and hearing the music and seeing all the smiling people, and people just kind with one another, helpful with one another, so considerate. And, there might have been people around, but nobody was in a hurry. Nobody was pushing people over. It was a very respectful, engaging environment, one that you just don't find other places, and not with the beauty that we beheld. It was amazing.
You're right. And there's always something happening there, whether it's an event or just people. There are always people in that square. Even on a slow day, you feel this energy there, but there's always people and family and friends.
Always.
That's a number one on our list in terms of must take people to see places. There's several number ones, but that's the one where we absolutely take folks to go check out the square, go have ice cream from Spark Cafe, and just enjoy our time there. Going into sort of the final chapter of this episode, let me first ask you before I forget, if folks want to learn more about NWACC or connect and collaborate, how do they do that?
Sure. Of course, you can go to the website, NWACC.edu is the first way. They can also email me, and it's D for Dennis, and then Rittle, and that's with 2 T's, Rittle at NWACC.edu. And so they can reach me via email. But the website is absolutely the easiest way. And then we're available on all the different social media platforms, whether especially I think Instagram, but I think now it's called Twitter has been moved to X, I want to say. So, but any of the platforms, we're on TikTok, we're on all those different spaces. People can find us, but the best way to find us is just going to the web, connecting with us, and we have Eddie the Eagle, which is our mascot, and that's a form of artificial intelligence that we leverage. He's answered tens of thousands of requests from students and prospective students over this past year. And he is very responsive. And of course, if there's any question we get asked, within moments, prospective students or students will be able to interact and visit with one of our employees. And so we're there to help, we're there to respond, and we're there to serve.
Perfect.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. Well, Dr. Rittle, your background spans military service, multiple educational achievements, leadership roles at different educational institutions. How have those experiences, how have they shaped the way you think about leadership, your leadership philosophy and your approach to education at NWACC?
Sure. When I first started into leadership, oftentimes people think of it as, I'll just put it bluntly, getting other people to do what you want them to do. And that can work for a little while, but it's not sustainable. I've learned more than anything else, it's all based upon a trust relationship. It's folks recognizing that as a leader, my role is to serve them and is to make sure their needs and even aspirations that I can help them fulfill are pursued and empowered and equipped in certain ways, as well as, of course, making sure that first and foremost, we're meeting the mission of the organization, but that's a shared goal oftentimes. So my role is to make sure that shared goal is kept in the forefront of all of our thinking, but still along the journey, my work to help them feel fulfilled as they're pursuing that goal and I'm pursuing that goal, that's leadership. That's leadership.
Absolutely.
It's trust. It's trust-based. It's always a trust-based relationship. And the more that folks recognize that the trust is, and it's always a two-way street, the more things that you can accomplish. And I would argue that the greater that the trust is woven into the relationship, the greater the change you can achieve and the more monumental of the accomplishments you can, in fact, accomplish.
So, okay, let's see. What I'm hearing there is trust is the centerpiece surrounded by shared goals. And instead of trying to get people to do what you want,
that's right.
It's actually getting them to do the things they dream of doing, their aspirations.
That's right, along the way. Yes, sir. And I'll run it through the context now of the college. And so then my work is also to make sure that when we make hard decisions, and let's say we're pursuing a certain objective, that then the variable of the student, that is, if I'm looking at an equation, whatever variable represents the needs of the students and the expectations of the students and the desires of the students, that particular variable is given the most weightiest weight or the greatest emphasis. So there are other variables in the space, but understanding that the need of that student and their interests are very much important, and they're at the forefront of our thoughts too. So you're keeping a number of pieces in play. But as the employees, between leaders and followers, as trust is there, we all have the same goal, which is the mission of the organization, and centerpiece to that is serving that student. And in my mind, that's the recipe of the cake. And if you exclude any one of those, the cake doesn't taste very good, or you don't have a cake.
Perfect. All right, we're going to shift to a couple of, I like to call whimsical questions.
Yes, sir.
If you could teach one core set in WACC, no matter how weird or unusual it may be, what would it be?
I would teach a class on what I would like to call risk leadership. We oftentimes think of risk management, but I oftentimes think that there needs to be also, management is always about control. Leadership is about letting go. Leadership is about letting flourish and being comfortable in a volume of chaos. Now, I'm not talking just chaos in general, but there's a volume of chaos. And one of my favorite statements is always, if you're in control, you're driving too slow. There's an element of you have to become comfortable being not fully in control all the time. And so what happens is if we get too comfortable with always being in control, we will not take the risks that are needed and actually are necessary for our region to flourish and for our fellow human being to be served and served well. So there's a balance there, but I believe that if I could teach a course, it would be risk leadership and talk about the art and the science of it, and that there's no failures, there's lessons, and there's improvements, but there are no failures, Right. And sometimes you have to dial it back a little bit, but other times I find that you kind of have to dial it up a little bit more, because if we tend to err on taking way too safe of a path and really missing out on the ability to think big, plan big, and play big.
Love it. I mean, the biggest risk is, you just said it. It's not doing. It's not going big enough.
That's right. The risk of omission.
That's right. If NWACC were a genre of music, what would it be and why?
Indie pop, because we're eclectic, we're inclusive, but we're very thoughtful. And I would suggest there's a level of intelligence to that. And I like to think about the school. We're not elitisms or anything like that, but we're there to help people learn how to learn and help them more than anything else be great professionals, because then wherever life will take them, and if they need to get reskilled or upskilled, we're there along that journey to help them through the path. And I would like to give another shout out to Upskill NWA.
Yes.
Great organization, great partner there. And I think I mentioned the Amazium and Sam Dean, but those folks are just fantastic, and they allow us to be stretched, but they also allow us to continue to serve that learner. And in my mind, with the genre, it plays in that space because we want to be creative, inclusive, but yet being willing to take some of those risks. So that's Indie pop.
Indie pop.
And that's for independent pop.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Rittle, what's a book, a movie, or a hobby that has unexpectedly influenced your approach to leadership?
Wow. I'm going to use it. It's not necessarily a book, but it was my work on this research. It was years ago by a woman named Karen Jen. She's retired now. She was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and she was a thought leader on conflict management. I did not realize how much leadership involved in managing conflict, and I would even argue it's really conflict leadership. Yep. Because within the space, you need to have conflict. Conflict can be very healthy at times, but there's other times where conflict is not healthy. And it's discerning between the two and making sure that you don't shift from healthy conflict to unhealthy conflict. Like, you want people having differences of opinion and differences of ideas, because disagreement at its core is where all learning begins, because you begin to ask a question. You thought one thing, but now someone else or something else is challenging a thought or an idea or a principle that you held to, and now you're questioning it. And it's at that moment that learning has opportunity to be sparked. Now, it might reinforce already what you think, or it might take a twist, or it might take a U-turn or a right turn. It doesn't matter. The benefit is it challenges you. And so conflict, in the role of conflict in how we lead, is imperative. And what I learned in a nutshell is a quote that I have shared out. I actually even put it on my own website. If you'd like to visit me there, I'm not trying to put a plug in for that, but that's DennisRittle.com. And at my website, one of the quotes I like to share oftentimes is, people are not so much against you. Instead, they're for themselves. And oftentimes when I see folks who may appear to be opposing either something I'm saying or something that I'm advocating for, they're not so much against me. They're looking at it through their lens. And my job then is to meet them where they are and try to help them at least understand where I am. And maybe we can find middle ground. Maybe we can't. Or maybe we both find a new landing space. But through the process, growth and opportunity happen. And that's a beautiful thing. And so oftentimes I'm reminded of that, because otherwise we can start viewing people as obstacles. And that's the worst thing that can happen, because then it's us and them, and versus it just being all of us. It becomes an us and them situation, and that's not healthy. So that was my biggest lesson. And I really hold on to that. And then, and that helps me in some other spaces as well, when I come to think about the importance then of solitude in my life, and things that help keep me centered, because otherwise your mental talk goes sideways, and that all goes back to conflict management, because conflict isn't just between a person and another person, or a person and a group of people. It can also be within one's self, which leads to very unhealthy issues, and we call that our self-talk. And we'll get into, growth mindset. And I don't want to play in all those spaces today, but all that ties back to how we lead conflict, both between us and others and within ourselves. Yeah. So Karen Jen, that was that research. Yes, sir. And I'm sorry, and you can Google that, and she is well published, and most of her work now, a lot of her work is available online. Great thinker.
For a moment there, you took me back to a time in my early 20s when I didn't understand that people weren't against me,
right?
That they were just for themselves,
for themselves.
And I didn't understand that at all. And it's only when I found the idea of, oh gosh, you said it well. You said the right phrase, growth. That the idea that I should be focused on growth, that I was able to move forward. Yes. In fact, it's kind of an old book now, but this probably, the second most, but the second most influential book in my life is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, yes, sir.
At that time in my life, I needed to read it so bad, and yes. I accidentally discovered it out of frustration.
Yes, sir.
And it changed everything.
That's a good point. And I mean, if I parlayed this in, and I want to be careful, because I don't want to necessarily speak to, necessarily religious literature.
Sure.
But there was a class that I took years ago. It was with grad studies. And I have a couple of graduate degrees, so it was my first one. And I was in a class that was talking about, how to work through just relationship challenges that you always face in leadership, and those relational challenges. Sure. And they said, and I think this is good for any human being, but there's wisdom literature, and you can find in the Proverbs. And the statement was, if you read a proverb a day, every day of the month, because there's 31 of them, and you do that for 5 years, it will really help how you work with people. Oh. And I took that challenge. It was very transformational, but it all comes back to conflict management. It's how you work with other people. And what you find is that most of the literature we have through research parlays nicely with the literature that we see in wisdom literature, and that they don't conflict with each other. They shake hands. And I think there's tremendous value in us understanding that there is nothing new under the sun. It's not like we're trying to solve new problems when it comes to how we work with others. As long as there have been people on planet Earth, people have had challenges working with other people. And the better that we can resolve that matter, the better that we can work together, and we can accomplish incredible feats. Incredible feats.
Perfect.
Thank you for allowing me to at least add that extra thought.
No, that's great. You've dropped many wisdoms or many nuggets of wisdom, much wisdom. And so I'm looking for one more piece of wisdom from you.
Yes,
what
sir.
Advice would you give to someone who is aspiring to make an impact in the field of education?
Within the field of education, first and foremost, spend time in solitude daily. I think that's important. I'm not going to drop some books here, but there are a number of pieces of literature been written through antiquity that speak to the importance of solitude, because life has a way of wanting to ruthlessly shape you into something that you are not. And solitude allows you to remind yourself of who you are and why you're here. And I think those are the two most important questions that any human and any leader, and particularly in education, you have to ask yourself. Who am I? Why am I here? And that will help you answer the next question, which is, where am I going? And then, who am I taking with me? Am I taking anybody with me, or am I going on a long walk by myself? Those are root questions, but solitude becomes the means. It's not the end. It's the median in which you have to path. And it takes discipline to do that, because life has a way of crowding that out. The tyranny of the urgent. Everything is urgent, everything is important, and it ruthlessly works out those moments in which you need to recenter and refocus, because then everything else comes into play and comes into focus. Your priorities do, and some of the things that seem so daunting and so hard aren't so daunting and hard after all, because you've recentered. I think another thing is to always remain curious. Try not to be quick to know answers. I've thought when I went through my educational journey, and I'm always learning. I mean, learning is very much a way of life. It has to be. People have asked, wow, you hold 6 degrees. Like, why did you keep going after them? I said, because there's so many things I'm curious about.
Sure.
I'm just curious. And I recognize again and again that if you don't stay curious, you get stale really quickly. And I also can't learn something in which I'm speaking. I can only learn when I'm silent and I'm listening. And so remaining curious and remaining leaning forward in that space, so you continue to surround yourself with different voices and different thoughts and ideas, and not being intimidated by them. They're only going to help. And they're either going to help me be reinforced in what I think I believe or know, or challenge it and say, maybe I don't have as good of a handle on that, and I need to really rethink that whole idea or that whole notion or that whole philosophy that I have in a certain space in my life. So I really do enjoy that, and I think that ties into reading widely but also reading deeply. Some folks try to get through content. I try to approach it as I want the content to get through to me. And I'll leave it like that.
It's a great way to look at it. I like it. Last question. And I'm changing up my last question a little bit from the way I normally ask it. So today I'm going to ask you this. What's something that I haven't asked you that you think would reveal a surprising aspect of your life and your work?
What drives me?
What drives you, Dr. Rittle?
I've had a very difficult first 2 decades to my life because of things that were in my environment that I had no control over. But during that journey, I'll go back to it full circle and say, it came down to, was I going to be shaped by my environment, or was I going to choose to go forward in spite of the obstacles that I was encountering? I oftentimes describe it as, you can either be the leaf on the pond driven by the wind and the waves, or you can be the pebble in the pond that makes a few waves of your own. And I decided to be the pebble and not the leaf, and it has definitely made all the difference. It doesn't mean at times that I'm not moved by others, but I think you have to recognize that you have to operate in both spaces. But if you're only the leaf and always the leaf, you will be a victim, and you will be always shaped by others. So what drives me then? For those that have been given much, much is required. And so when I look at how I serve people, I think about, how can I help people who are in difficult situations or have life circumstances come their way? And how can I be that person that comes along the way and, offer assistance in some capacity that might allow them to change their trajectory to no longer be a victim, but now be an overcomer, or be a person who shapes and creates a new space and a new way of looking at things. So that's something, the drive that's in me does come from those very early days. And It stays with me very deeply and very profoundly. And then in part, I think it parlays with my faith, because at the end of the day, I know I'm accountable. And I'm accountable not just for everything that I do, but also for the things that I don't do. And I think it's the second of the two that oftentimes we forget.
That's true.
It's what we don't do. And so for those who have been given much, much is required. And so it's important that I do what needs to be done to help others be better and have better lives. And in the journey, I'm greatly satisfied and life is good. And it's wonderful to be in NWA. Make no mistake, because this is the perfect place for me to be able to live out what drives me forward. Thank you, James.
Hey, thank you. I was listening to that and thinking about how in many ways you and I were shaped the same way, slightly different experience, but in the same way, and ended up with the same philosophy. You just say it in a beautiful way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to go back and listen to that many, many times, because you're helping me sort of shape how I should answer that, because that's exactly that's exactly how I should be thinking about it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, James. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Dr. Rittle, thank you for joining me and the Bentonville Beacon audience today and sharing your story. I really have enjoyed hearing your story and the advice and the wisdom that you've provided, and hearing about the way you're shaping Northwest Arkansas Community College and what you see for the future.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a great place. And I can always say our motto right now is fly forward, go Eagles. Northwest Arkansas Community College, we take a great joy in who we are, but also recognize on why we're here. We want to serve this region, not just the region, but the nation and even the world. We appreciate the foundation that we've been given and those who believe in us and keep us going forward, because it's through our philanthropic supporters, our community members, all of our region, that we're able to do what we do. We can't do it without their support, because absent of that, we're just a shell of ourselves. So I got to give a big shout out to all of our supporters. They are why we're here and why we can do what we do.
Perfectly said. Oh, I want to thank you for one more thing. I just realized that I didn't mention it any time in here. You're on the board of the Greater Bentonville Area Chamber of Commerce, where I'm a staff member. So thank you,
of course,
for your leadership there and to the entire board.
It's a true pleasure. It's a true pleasure. Great board, and it serves a great region. And of course, Bentonville, I mean, what better place?
Absolutely.
What better place?
Perfect. So, hey, a big thank you also goes out to you, our Bentonville Beacon audience. It's your continued supporting engagement that has, alongside the stories and insights from our guests like Dr. Rittle, that are what make this show so special. And it's an honor to provide a platform where these impactful narratives can be shared. Your enthusiasm and your participation make all of this possible. So I encourage you to share Dr. Rittle's story and the exciting developments at NWACC with your friends, your family, and colleagues. Spreading these stories helps amplify the positive impact and the innovative spirit that's thriving here in the greater Bentonville area. Keep tuning in and discover more about the entrepreneurs, the business executives, and the community leaders who are the driving force behind the dynamic growth of the greater Bentonville and Northwest Arkansas region, where innovation meets community, and a place where you get more of what you want and less of what you don't. You can find all of our episodes at bentonvillebeacon.com or on your favorite podcast player. And don't forget to hit subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes. Until next time, keep on exploring and supporting the incredible stories and people of our community. See you next time.